I've got no time for the radical Islam. Their religion concerns me because what it says in the Quran, they hate Westerners, and that's what it's all about. You know, you say, oh well, there's good Muslims out there. Well, I'm sorry. How can you tell me there are good Muslims?
Hey guys, what's happening? Welcome to another video. Just a quick one today about Pauline Hanson's recent comments and the whole outrage about there being any good Muslims. And the fact that she's made a bit of a mess articulating this, it hasn't helped the situation. And, you know, typical, you got all the left and the opposition jumping on it to smear her. So that's no surprise there. She's made a bit of a mess articulating what she meant there. And, you know, it's quite clear she was aiming for the radical Islamists, you know, not your typical Muslim. And she cleared that up later in the interview as well, by the way.
There are a lot of moderate Muslims in Australia who are, as you put it, good Muslims. But I think we can agree that radical extremist Islam that doesn't support Australian values has no place here. I just want to pick up on...
But the opposition are going to do what they're going to do. They're going to use this opportunity to smear One Nation, smear Hanson. And, you know, this is just a play because One Nation is surging in popularity right now. They're just smashing Liberals, and they're right up there rubbing shoulders with the Labor Party in the polls. So very scary for them. But no surprise that they're going to smear her. They're going to use this opportunity and run with it, because that's what the left does. The left just humiliates, they shout down, they intimidate. That's what they do. It's what they do overseas as well. I mean, you know, you got the AfD party in Germany. You know, they're touting actually banning the whole party, which is leading in the polls, which is just absolutely wild. You got Le Pen and the Conservatives there in France. And Trump is the classic example, isn't it? You know, all the political lawfare and all the times they just tried to impeach him and everything. They just can't win on fair debate. They can't win, you know, in exchanging of ideas. They win by shutting you down. And that's what's going to happen to Hanson as well. And the left does this because they just don't have a moral basis. They don't have a moral foundation. And if you don't have a moral foundation, well, you know, you make up the rules as you go. You use opportunities and do whatever you can to bring your enemies down. There's no morality, there's no loyalty, there's no honor. It's just you have to win and do whatever it takes to win. And the truth is, the left loathe conservatives. They can't stand conservatives, Christians. They hate what Australia stood for, its heritage, its history, which is, you know, deeply steeped in Christian theology and philosophy. There's no doubt about that. And they can't stand that. They want to tear it all down. They want to destroy it. They want to remove that identity. And in many ways, they're achieving that goal. Now, look, on the topic of Islam itself, you know, Hanson makes a pretty good point that with radical Islam, because there's such a heavy reliance on the scriptures, the Quranic scriptures themselves, it's very hard to tell people apart. Not just your average Joe Blow, but just the ones who might be, you know, a bit more on the stringent side, on the believing side of Islam, ones who are activists maybe. You could have people who are part of the Muslim Brotherhood, and, you know, it's been shown clear that the Muslim Brotherhood aims to supplant pretty much every country in the world. You know, it's hell-bent on world domination. You got Islamic countries which have banned the Muslim Brotherhood, the UAE, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, you know, the list goes on. It's especially telling for the Muslim Brotherhood when you look at their key writers and the books that they look to, like Milestones by Sayyid Qutb, and just an overview of that, you can just see that he has taken the Quranic scriptures and pretty much laid out a Marxist veneer over it, but it works really well with the Quranic scriptures. That's the scary part. And what Sayyid did in that book is pretty much He took the Marxist ideas of oppressor and oppressed and laid them over the Quranic scriptures of, the infidels and the believers. And, this idea of false consciousness. Now, it's not a direct overlay of Marxism over Islam, but you definitely see the themes come through. Absolutely. Even by analyzing the Quranic scriptures, you find some really violent and militant ideas there. Even if you study the history of the spread of Islam, you look at how Islam spread right throughout the Middle East, North Africa, right up into Southern Europe, and in the stunning time, in such quick time that it took to spread in those areas, that wasn't done by spreading the good word of Islam. It was done with the sword. It was done with intimidation. And on the idea of a good Muslim, well, it's amazing how people just run with this in the media and the left, the opposition. Look, even Pauline Hanson and conservatives themselves. I wonder if they're all running off the same definition of a good person. All this fuss over a good Muslim. Well, what is good to begin with? That's what we need to figure out first, because I don't think we know what good is anymore. We certainly don't all agree on good. That's for sure. If you ask a Muslim, if you ask a Christian, if you ask an atheist, when you drill and probe and press, you are going to get different ideas of good. That's the bottom line. But it's like, in the main public sphere, we don't want to address those hard questions. We don't want to press these ideas. Now, look, credit to Pauline Hanson. She's at least going against the trend of just cultural suicide that's happening in the West, just as Trump is and other conservatives around the world, which is good. But I think on the conservative side as well, we do need to do some soul searching and, just get a handle of what we are conserving. And look, one of the leading conservative commentators out there is Andrew Bolt, and I really appreciate his work. But a friend of mine sent me this little clip of him talking to Barnaby Joyce, and he said something a little bit disturbing.
Now, I should say the two examples you gave of Christian teaching come from the Old Testament and not the New Testament, which supersedes the Old. And I should also add what I pointed out on the show. Yeah, I know you did, but I'm educating anyone that's going to say, aha.
Okay, so he mentions that the New Testament simply supersedes the Old Testament, and you could get an idea there that it's as if to say, well, it's as if to concede that, look, the Old Testament has some bad ideas and stuff like that, and but that's not to worry about anymore because we have the New Testament and that supersedes the Old Testament, and we can just throw the Old Testament under the bus. That's a problem if you actually read the Bible. That's a big problem. Not only do you get Old Testament citations right throughout the New Testament, Jesus says himself, not one jot, not one tittle shall pass away before heaven and earth pass away. My word is eternal. He's pretty much saying. That's Jesus' own words. Jesus also says directly that I did not come to abolish the law, meaning the Old Testament, but I came to fulfill it. There is no idea in the New Testament that we find where the Old Testament just, can fade into the background and not exist anymore. No, it's very much critically part of God's word and revelation to us. The New Testament does provide a new lens to look back on the Old Testament. But the Old Testament is in no way obsolete. That would be making a grave error. In fact, that's what the main error is of lots of these New Age, prosperity gospel, kind of open-minded Christians. That's I think some of the main cause for going down that path, because they've undermined God's word, God's law especially. You can't just do away with God's word like that. You can't have the New Testament without the Old and the Old without the New. you need them both. Not to mention the fact that the Bible for the New Testament church was actually the Old Testament. So, Paul or the apostles, they were running around with the Old Testament, but it wasn't the Old Testament to them. It was simply the scriptures. And this was how they could vindicate their claims, actually. The New Testament even records when Jesus, after he had been resurrected, him showing the apostles all the scriptures, how they all direct towards him and how they prophesy about him. Well, which scriptures were they? Which scriptures was Jesus going through and showing them? It was the Old Testament. So it's very much valid, very much paramount, critically part of the Christian faith. You can't be done away with. And look, all of this to say that there's lots of confusion out there. There's lots of confusion out there. All of this to say that it's Christ or chaos. It's Christ or chaos. You got on one hand, you got the secular atheists. They want their cake and they want to have it too, but you have to pick a philosophical lane. And the best one is the one that you're trying to destroy and erode in this country. It's the one that afforded you all of the prosperity that you enjoy today and that you are squandering away as well. It's Christ or chaos, not only for the secularists in this country, it's Christ or chaos for the conservatives in this country too. We need to understand what exactly we're conserving. And if we're going to throw half of the Christian scriptures under the bus like that, you're going to end up with the same sort of mess that's happening today over and over again. And it's just going to spiral into absurdity. So that's all for this video, guys. Just some quick comments on the whole Hanson situation. I just think that there needs to be less outrage and more clear dialogue on all these things. When we throw around terms like a good moral person, well, you got so many people coming from all different walks of life, and they're all going to have differing ideas of good. And Islam itself, it's a basket case. You can't just flatten it out like this one-dimensional thing, there's good and bad and etc. Well, it's a bit more ambiguous than that when you consider the Quranic scriptures, movements like the Muslim Brotherhood, and the history as well. But I plan to release my next video, which is on the topic of the 100% certainty of the Christian faith, hopefully maybe within a couple of weeks. Might release another short video before then, where I've had some really good debates with really smart atheists online, who by the end were left with nothing else to say. And that's not boasting in myself in any way, but that's just me using the biblical method that's laid out in the scriptures on how to defend the faith. So thanks for watching, guys. All the best to you. God bless, and we'll see you on the next video.